Maya stared at her phone, reading the text message for the third time. Her roommate Jessica was practically begging through the screen. Please, please, please. I feel like death. Fever of 102. I can't cancel on them again. It was Thursday evening, and Maya had planned to spend the night exactly how she spent most Thursday evenings, on the couch with leftover Chinese food and whatever show she was binge-watching that week. But Jessica had been good to her since she moved to the city 8 months ago, letting her take the smaller bedroom for cheaper rent when money was tight, never complaining about her art supplies taking over the kitchen table. Maya typed back, "What time do I need to be there?" The relief in Jessica's response was immediate. "You're a lifesaver. 6:30, I'll text you the address. The dad's name is Ethan. Daughter is Sophie, she's 6. Super easy, kid. Just make sure she eats something that isn't cookies and gets to bed by 8:30. Maya glanced at the clock. It was already 5:45. So much for her quiet evening. She changed out of her retail job uniform, a polo shirt that still smelled faintly like the candle store where she worked, and pulled on jeans and a sweater. Jessica had sent the address to a building downtown, the kind with a doorman and marble floors in the lobby. Maya felt suddenly self-conscious about her worn sneakers as she walked through the polished entrance. The doorman called up to announce her, and moments later, she was riding the elevator to the 12th floor. Her stomach did a little flip. She'd babysat plenty as a teenager back in her hometown, but this felt different. This was someone else's regular job, someone else's relationship with this family. She was just filling in. The apartment door opened before she could knock. The man standing there looked exhausted. That was her first thought. He was probably in his mid-30s, wearing dress pants and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His dark hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it all day. But when he saw her, relief flooded his face. "You must be Jessica's roommate. Maya, right?" He stepped back to let her in. "I'm Ethan. Thank you so much for doing this last minute. Jessica texted me that she's sick and I have this presentation tomorrow that I'm nowhere near ready for." "No problem," Maya said, stepping into the apartment. It was nice, really nice. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city lights starting to twinkle as dusk settled in. The furniture was modern but comfortable looking, and there were toys scattered around in a way that made the space feel lived in rather than messy. "Daddy, is that the new babysitter?" A little girl appeared from around the corner, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had clearly seen better days. She had her father's dark hair, pulled back in a ponytail that was coming loose, and she was looking at Maya with open curiosity. "This is Sophie," Ethan said, and something in his voice softened when he looked at his daughter. "Soph, this is Maya. She's going to hang out with you tonight while I work in my office. Where's Jessica?" Sophie asked, not moving from her spot. "Jessica's sick, sweetie, but Maya's really nice. Right, Maya?" Ethan looked at her almost pleadingly. Maya crouched down to Sophie's eye level, something she remembered from her babysitting days. Kids didn't like being towered over by strangers. "I am pretty nice," she said with a smile. "And Jessica told me you like art. I actually brought some of my supplies with me just in case you wanted to paint or draw later." Sophie's eyes widened slightly. "You paint?" "I do. I'm not very good yet, but I'm practicing." That wasn't entirely true. Maya was actually pretty decent, but she'd learned that kids responded better when you weren't trying to be the expert at everything. "I like painting," Sophie said quietly, taking a small step closer. Ethan checked his watch and winced. "I really need to get back to work." "Sophie, you're going to be good for Maya, right?" "I'm always good," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "That's true, you are." Ethan grabbed a laptop bag from the couch. "Maya, there's food in the fridge. Sophie likes pasta, chicken nuggets, that kind of thing. Nothing too adventurous. She's supposed to be in bed by 8:30, but if she's not tired, 8:45 is fine. I'll be in my office. It's down that hall if you need anything. And seriously, thank you again. You're saving my life tonight." He disappeared down the hallway before Maya could respond. She looked at Sophie, who was still clutching her rabbit and watching her carefully. "So," Maya said, "are you hungry? Want to eat first, or should we see what kind of art supplies I brought?" Sophie considered this with the seriousness of someone making a major life decision. "Art supplies first," she finally decided. Maya pulled her tote bag onto the couch and started taking things out. She'd grabbed whatever she had on hand. Watercolors, colored pencils, a sketchbook, some brushes. Nothing fancy, but Sophie's face lit up like Maya had just revealed buried treasure. Can we paint? Sophie asked, already reaching for the watercolor set. Absolutely. Let me find somewhere we can set up without making a mess. They ended up at the kitchen table, which was big enough to spread out on. Maya laid down some old newspapers she found in the recycling bin, filled a cup with water, and set Sophie up with the paints and some thick paper from her sketchbook. For a while, they painted in comfortable silence. Sophie worked with intense concentration, her tongue poking out slightly as she focused on mixing colors. Maya started her own painting, keeping one eye on what Sophie was doing. What are you making? Maya asked after a while. My cat, Sophie said. His name is Mr. Whiskers, but he doesn't really have whiskers anymore because they fell out when he got old. Can I meet Mr. Whiskers? He's sleeping. He's always sleeping. Sophie added more orange to her painting. He's probably on Daddy's bed. How old is he? Really old. Like 15. That's older than me. Sophie looked up at her creation critically. This doesn't look like him. Maya leaned over to look. The painting was mostly orange blobs with some black spots and what might have been ears. I think it looks great. You got his colors right. But his face is wrong. Well, cats are hard to paint. Want to know a secret? Maya lowered her voice conspiratorially. Even famous artists think cats are hard to paint. Sophie looked skeptical but interested. Really? Really? That's why you just have to paint what you see in your head, not what other people see. Your Mr. Whiskers probably looks perfect to you. Sophie studied her painting again, then nodded, apparently satisfied with this logic. They painted for another 20 minutes. Sophie started a second painting, this one of her school, she explained, while Maya worked on a simple landscape. It had been a while since she'd just painted for fun, not worrying about her online portfolio or whether something was good enough to show potential clients. Are you hungry yet? Maya asked eventually, noticing it was almost 7:30. Kind of. What do you want to eat? Your dad said there's pasta and chicken nuggets. Sophie wrinkled her nose. Jessica always makes the same pasta. Can you make something different? Maya got up and checked the fridge. There was indeed pasta, penne, and some basic ingredients. Marinara sauce, some frozen vegetables, cheese. She could work with this. How about pasta with butter and cheese and some veggies? She suggested. What kind of veggies? I see broccoli and peas in here. Another nose wrinkle. Peas are gross. Okay, just broccoli then. And we can add some garlic. Have you ever had garlic bread? Sophie shook her head. Your dad has bread and garlic. Want to help me make some? Cooking together turned out to be a good call. Sophie stood on a step stool next to Maya, helping butter the bread slices and watching with fascination as Maya minced garlic. The apartment filled with warm, good smells. And Sophie chattered away about her day at school. Her best friend Hannah, who was moving away next month, and how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, so she could make Mr. Whiskers feel better. They ate at the table, their paintings pushed carefully to the side to dry. Sophie ate more than Maya expected, including the broccoli, which she declared not as gross as I thought. After dinner, they cleaned up together. Well, Maya cleaned while Sophie put the watercolors back in the box with painstaking care. Then they settled on the couch and Sophie pulled out a picture book about a bear who was afraid of the dark. Jessica usually reads me 2 stories, Sophie said. 2 stories it is. They were halfway through the second book when Maya heard a door open down the hall. Footsteps approached and Ethan appeared, still looking tired but slightly less frantic than before. How's it going? He asked, then stopped, sniffing the air. Did you cook something? Maya made garlic bread, Sophie announced proudly. And pasta, that wasn't boring. Ethan's eyebrows raised as he looked at Maya. You didn't have to cook. I would have been fine with chicken nuggets. It was easy, Maya said, and Sophie helped. He walked over to the kitchen and saw the painting still drying on the table. He picked up Sophie's orange blob cat carefully, and his expression softened in that same way it had earlier. Is this Mr. Whiskers? Yes, and before you say it looks weird, Maya says even famous artists think cats are hard to paint. Ethan met Maya's eyes over his daughter's head, and something passed between them. Amusement, maybe, or gratitude. I think it's perfect, he said. Can we keep it? Of course, Daddy. He set the painting down gently and checked his watch. It's almost bedtime, Soph. Can Maya put me to bed? There was a brief flash of something across Ethan's face, hurt maybe or surprise. But he recovered quickly. If Maya doesn't mind. I don't mind, Maya said. Sophie's bedtime routine was simple. Brush teeth, put on pajamas, one more story. Her room was painted a soft yellow, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and bookshelves overflowing with picture books and chapter books alike. Maya read the requested story, something about a princess who rescued herself, and tucked Sophie in with her worn rabbit. Will you come back? Sophie asked as Maya turned on the nightlight. I don't know, Maya said honestly. That's up to your dad and Jessica. I hope you come back. You're nice, and you're better at painting than Jessica. Maya smiled. Sleep well, Sophie. When she came back to the living room, Ethan was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up when he heard her. She asleep? He asked. Just about. He stood up, running a hand through his already messy hair. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. How much was Jessica paying you? I'll double it for the short notice. You don't have to do that. I want to. He pulled out his wallet, and Maya noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Rough day, he said, catching her looking. Rough week, actually. Rough month, if I'm being honest. He handed her some bills, more than double what Jessica usually made, and walked her to the door. But before she could leave, he spoke again. Jessica mentioned she's been wanting to reduce her hours, something about picking up more shifts at her other job. He hesitated. Would you be interested in taking over some of her evenings? I know it's a lot to ask when we just met, but Sophie clearly likes you and I'm... He broke off, looking embarrassed. I'm desperate, honestly. Good babysitters are hard to find, and Sophie's been through a lot of changes lately. Maya should have asked what he meant by that. Should have asked for more details, more information. But something about the way he looked, exhausted and worried and trying so hard, made her say yes before thinking it through. I could do Tuesday and Thursday evenings, she heard herself say. Those are my days off from work. The relief on his face was immediate and overwhelming. Really? That would be incredible. Same time, 6:30? That works. Thank you. He said it with such genuine feeling that Maya felt something squeeze in her chest. Seriously, you have no idea what this means. As she rode the elevator back down to the lobby, Maya wondered what exactly she'd just agreed to. She didn't know anything about this man except that he worked too much and loved his daughter. Didn't know why Sophie had been through a lot of changes, or why he seemed so relieved to find someone willing to help. But she thought about Sophie's careful concentration as she painted, the way she'd opened up over garlic bread, how she'd asked if Maya would come back, 2 evenings a week. How complicated could it be? Maya had no idea that she'd just asked herself a question that would change everything. The first Tuesday evening felt different than that initial Thursday. Maya knew what to expect this time, or thought she did. She showed up at 6:30 with her bag of art supplies and a hopeful attitude. Sophie answered the door with Ethan right behind her. The little girl's face broke into a huge grin when she saw Maya. You came back. Sophie grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. I told Daddy you would, but he said maybe you'd be too busy. I promised, didn't I? Maya said, letting herself be dragged toward the living room. Ethan looked better than he had the previous week. Less frantic, at least. He'd changed out of his work clothes into jeans and a t-shirt, and his hair wasn't quite as chaotic. Thank you again for doing this, he said, grabbing his keys from the counter. I have a client dinner tonight, so I'll probably be back around 9:30. Sophie's already eaten, but there are snacks if she gets hungry later. We'll be fine, Maya assured him. He hesitated at the door, looking back at Sophie, who was already pulling out a puzzle from the shelf. Call me if you need anything, I mean it. Anything at all. Daddy, go, Sophie said without looking up. We have important puzzle business. After he left, the apartment felt quieter. Sophie worked on her puzzle, 100 pieces showing different farm animals, while Maya sat beside her helping find edge pieces. It was peaceful in a way Maya hadn't expected. No pressure to entertain or impress, just easy companionship. Can I ask you something? Sophie said after a while, holding up a puzzle piece and squinting at it. Sure. Why don't you have kids? Maya blinked, caught off guard. Well, I'm only 24. That's pretty young to have kids. My mom had me when she was young, Sophie said matter-of-factly, fitting the piece into place. Daddy says I was a surprise, but a good one. It was the first time Sophie had mentioned her mother. Maya chose her words carefully. That's a nice way to put it. She died, Sophie added, still focused on the puzzle. 2 years ago. In a car crash, Maya's heart squeezed. I'm so sorry, Sophie. The little girl shrugged, but it wasn't casual. It was the shrug of someone who'd learned to carry something heavy. It's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but Daddy says it's okay to be sad about it. He gets sad too, but he tries to hide it because he thinks I don't notice. She said it so simply, with such clear-eyed awareness, that Maya didn't know how to respond. This was why Ethan had looked so relieved to find childcare. Why he worked late and seemed perpetually exhausted. He was doing this alone. Your dad seems like he loves you a lot, Maya said quietly. He does, but he's tired all the time, and he forgets stuff like parent-teacher conferences and that I hate mushrooms. Sophie looked up at Maya with serious eyes. I don't think he means to forget. His brain is just really full. Over the next few weeks, Maya settled into the rhythm of Tuesday and Thursday evenings. She learned Sophie's routines, her preferences, the way she needed 20 minutes to wind down before bed or she'd be too wired to sleep. She learned that Sophie was afraid of the dark, but too proud to admit it. So Maya started leaving the hallway light on, by accident. She learned that Sophie loved stories about brave girls and hated the color pink, despite what everyone assumed. And she started learning about Ethan, too, in small pieces. He worked at a venture capital firm downtown. Something Sophie explained meant he gives money to people who have ideas for businesses. He was trying to make partner, which apparently meant even longer hours and more stress. He'd met Sophie's mother in college, married young, and spent the last 2 years trying to figure out how to be both mom and dad to a grieving 6-year-old. Maya learned this not from Ethan directly, but from the traces of his life scattered around the apartment. Family photos on the bookshelf, a laughing woman with Sophie's exact smile, a Father's Day card on the fridge that read, "You're doing great, Daddy," in Sophie's careful handwriting, a stack of parenting books on the coffee table, all with bookmarks stuck somewhere in the middle, like he kept starting them but never had time to finish. Their conversations stayed brief and practical at first. Ethan would come home, ask how the evening went, pay her, and that was it. But gradually things shifted. It started the 3rd week when Ethan came home at 8 instead of 9. He looked surprised to find Maya and Sophie in the kitchen, flour everywhere, laughing over a batch of slightly lopsided cookies. We're baking, Sophie announced unnecessarily. Maya says these are called snickerdoodles, which is a funny word. It is a funny word, Ethan agreed, leaning against the doorframe. He looked exhausted as usual, but there was something else in his expression, something soft and maybe a little sad. That's your mom's recipe, he said to Sophie. The one from her recipe box. Sophie nodded, licking batter off her finger. Maya found it when we were looking for something to make. Is that okay? Of course it's okay, sweetheart. His voice caught slightly. I'm glad you're using it. He stayed in the kitchen while they finished, not helping exactly, just present. When the cookies came out of the oven, Sophie insisted he try one immediately, even though they were still too hot. Careful, Maya warned. But he'd already bitten into it. He made an exaggerated face that made Sophie giggle, fanning his mouth. But when he could actually taste it, his expression changed. These are perfect, he said quietly. Exactly how I remember. After Sophie went to bed that night, Ethan didn't immediately pull out his wallet like usual. Instead, he stood in the kitchen looking at the cooling cookies. I haven't made those since she died, he said. I kept meaning to, but I couldn't bring myself to open that recipe box. Felt like admitting she was really gone. He looked at Maya. Thank you for finding it, for making this place feel more like a home again. Sophie did most of the work, Maya said, uncomfortable with the weight of his gratitude. No, I mean it. He ran a hand through his hair, that gesture she was starting to recognize as his tell when he was trying to hold something together. These last few weeks, Sophie's been happier. She talks about you between visits, about the things you do together, the stuff you teach her. I can't tell you what that means to me. Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she just smiled and changed the subject to whether Sophie needed new art supplies. But after that night, Ethan started coming home earlier. Just by a little at first, 9 instead of 9:30, then 8:45, then 8:30. He joined them for the last half hour, sitting on the couch while Sophie showed him her latest drawings or helping clean up from whatever activity they'd done. Maya started cooking more often. It made sense, she told herself. Sophie needed dinner, and it was easier to make enough for 3 than to make a small portion just for the kid. She'd leave the extra in containers for Ethan, labeled with reheating instructions. The first time she did it, she worried it was too much, overstepping some invisible boundary between babysitter and whatever else. But when she came back the next week, the containers were washed and neatly stacked by the sink, and there was a thank you note in Ethan's handwriting tucked under one of them. "You don't have to keep feeding me," he said the next time he saw her. "But please don't stop," she laughed. Deal. They fell into an easy pattern. Maya would arrive at 6:30. She and Sophie would do homework first, reading practice, simple math, spelling words. Then they'd do something fun. Art projects, baking, building elaborate cities out of blocks. Maya brought new materials when she could afford them. Cheap craft supplies from the dollar store. Library books she thought Sophie would like. Ingredients for recipes she'd found online. One Thursday, she brought a beginner's yoga video she'd found on YouTube, thinking it might help Sophie with the anxiety she'd mentioned about her upcoming school presentation. They spread towels on the living room floor and tried to follow along, both of them laughing at the harder poses. When Ethan came home early, he found them both in completely incorrect downward dog positions, giggling helplessly. "Should I ask?" he said, fighting a smile. "Yoga is harder than it looks," Sophie gasped out between giggles. "Way harder," Maya agreed. "We're very bad at it." "I can see that." He set down his briefcase. "Mind if I join you?" "I'm probably as bad at yoga as you two." He was worse, actually, which made Sophie laugh even harder. The three of them spent 20 minutes contorting themselves into various shapes, none of them correct, all of them laughing. It was the most relaxed Maya had ever seen Ethan. Like for just a few minutes. He'd forgotten to be worried and tired and weighed down by responsibility. After Sophie went to bed, Ethan walked Maya to the door, like always. But instead of just saying goodnight, he paused. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Why are you doing this? I mean, I know I'm paying you. But you do so much more than babysitting. The cooking, the activities, the way you actually listen to Sophie. You're working retail during the day, trying to build your design career at night. These evenings with Sophie must cut into your time for that." Maya thought about it. She could give him the easy answer, that she liked Sophie, that the money helped, that it was only 2 evenings a week. But standing there in the quiet apartment, with Sophie's artwork taped to the walls and the lingering smell of the stir-fry she'd made for dinner, she found herself being honest. "I like being here," she said simply. "When I moved to the city, I thought it would feel more like home by now. But mostly it just feels lonely, you know? Working retail, coming home to an apartment where my roommate is never there, spending my evenings alone working on designs that might never go anywhere." She shrugged. "This feels like I'm part of something. Like I matter to someone." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "You do matter," he said finally. "To Sophie, definitely, and to me, more than you probably realize." There was something in the way he said it that made Maya's heart skip. She told herself she was reading too much into it, that he was just grateful for good childcare. But when their eyes met, she saw something that made her breath catch. Then the moment passed. Ethan cleared his throat, stepped back, pulled out his wallet. "Same time next Tuesday?" he asked, his voice carefully casual. "Same time," Maya agreed. As she walked home that night, she tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach. Tried to tell herself this was just a job, that the warm feeling she got in that apartment was about Sophie. Not about the way Ethan's whole face softened when he smiled, or the way he listened when she talked about her design work like it actually mattered. But when she got home and Jessica asked her how babysitting went, Maya found herself talking for 20 minutes about Sophie's latest painting, and the yoga disaster and the stir-fry she'd made. She didn't mention the way Ethan had looked at her, or the warmth that had spread through her chest when he said she mattered. Jessica listened with raised eyebrows but didn't comment. Not until Maya was finally winding down. "You know you're talking about them like they're your family, right?" Jessica said. "What? No, I'm not." "Maya, you just spent 20 minutes telling me about a 6-year-old's day at school and her dad's favorite dinner. That's not babysitter talk. That's family talk." Maya wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. Because Jessica was right. Somewhere between that first emergency fill-in and now, this had stopped being just a job. She looked forward to Tuesday and Thursday evenings more than anything else in her week. She thought about Sophie and Ethan during her shifts at work, wondered how they were doing, made mental notes of things to bring them or activities to try. "It's just nice to feel needed," Maya said quietly. Jessica's expression softened. "I know, just be careful, okay? Sophie's a great kid, and Ethan seems like a good guy. But they're not actually your family, and Sophie's already lost one important person. You don't want to become someone else she loses if this doesn't work out. It's not like that, Maya protested. But as she lay in bed that night, she couldn't stop thinking about Jessica's warning. Couldn't stop remembering the way Ethan had said she mattered, or how natural it had felt to be on that living room floor laughing with both of them. She was in deeper than she'd meant to be. The question was whether she was brave enough to admit it, even to herself. Maya's phone buzzed during her lunch break at the candle store. She glanced at it while eating her sandwich in the back room, expecting a text from Jessica or maybe her mom checking in from back home. It was Ethan. Sophie has an art show at school next Friday at 6. She keeps asking if you'll come. No pressure at all, but if you're free, she'd love to have you there. I can pay you for the time. Maya stared at the message. An art show wasn't babysitting. It was something else entirely. Something family members went to, not employees. She should say no. Should maintain that professional distance Jessica had warned her about. She typed back, "I'd love to come. And you don't need to pay me." His response came immediately. "Thank you, really. She's going to be so excited." When Maya arrived that Friday evening, she felt nervous in a way she hadn't before. She'd dressed more carefully than usual. Not fancy, just nicer than her usual jeans and sweater. She told herself it was because it was a school event. Not because she wanted to make a good impression. The school gym was packed with parents. Kids running around in their best clothes and artwork covering every available wall. Maya spotted Ethan first. He stood out in the crowd, scanning the entrance like he was looking for someone. When he saw her, his face lit up. "You made it," he said, weaving through the crowd toward her. He was wearing a suit, probably coming straight from work, but he'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. "Sophie's been asking if you were here every 5 minutes. Where is she?" "Over by the first grade section. Come on." He started walking, then paused and gestured for Maya to go ahead. But the crowd was thick, and after someone nearly bumped into her, Ethan's hand landed gently on her lower back, guiding her through the press of people. It was a casual touch, protective, the kind of thing anyone might do. So why did it make her so aware of everywhere they were almost touching? Sophie spotted them before they reached her display. She came running, her dress shoes clacking on the gym floor, her hair in 2 careful braids that were already coming loose. "Maya, you came and you're wearing a dress." "It's a skirt," Maya corrected, laughing. "But yes, I dressed up for your big night. Come see my painting. It's right here." Sophie grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the wall where a row of paintings hung at kid height. Sophie's painting showed 3 figures, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one, standing in front of a tall building. They were holding hands, and the colors were bright and cheerful, all blues and yellows and greens. "That's our building," Sophie explained, pointing. "And that's me, and that's Daddy, and that's you." Maya's breath caught. "You painted me?" "Of course. You're at our house all the time. Miss Rodriguez said to paint our family." Sophie said it so matter-of-factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Maya glanced at Ethan. He was looking at the painting with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between proud and worried and soft. "It's beautiful." "Soph," he said quietly. A woman approached their little group, middle-aged with kind eyes and a teacher's patient smile. "You must be Sophie's dad," she said to Ethan. "I'm Miss Rodriguez. Sophie talks about you all the time." "Nice to meet you," Ethan said, shaking her hand. "This is Maya, Sophie's—" He paused, clearly unsure how to finish that sentence. "I help take care of Sophie sometimes," Maya supplied. "Oh, how nice." Miss Rodriguez smiled warmly at Maya, then turned back to Ethan. "And this must be your wife?" She gestured at Maya. "Oh no, we're not," Maya started. "She's not my mom," Sophie interrupted. "My mom died, but Maya comes over and we paint and cook and stuff." Miss Rodriguez's face flooded with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have assumed." "It's fine," Ethan said quickly. "Really. Easy mistake." But the teacher had already moved on to the next family, apologizing as she went. Maya stood there, her cheeks burning, very aware of the way other parents were glancing their way. Ethan cleared his throat. "Sorry about that," he muttered. "It's okay. It happens." Maya tried to keep her voice light, but her heart was pounding. Sophie, oblivious to the tension, had already run off to show a friend her painting. Ethan and Maya stood together in awkward silence, looking at the artwork of a little girl who'd painted them like a family. She didn't mean anything by it, Ethan said finally, nodding toward the painting. Including you in the family picture. You're around a lot and she's 6. She doesn't really think about categories like we do. I know. I should have explained better to the teacher. I just didn't know how to. He stopped, frustrated. I didn't know what to call you. Babysitter doesn't feel right anymore. But I don't know what does. Before Maya could respond, another parent approached. A dad she vaguely recognized from dropping Sophie off once, and struck up a conversation with Ethan about soccer sign-ups. Then a mom asked Maya how old their daughter was, and Maya had to explain again that she wasn't Sophie's mother. Each time it happened, the explanation felt more awkward. By the time they left the school an hour later, Maya felt exhausted from the constant corrections and curious looks. Sophie, meanwhile, was riding high on excitement and compliments about her painting. She chattered nonstop about who said what about her artwork, what her friend Hannah's painting looked like, how Miss Rodriguez said she had real talent. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? Sophie asked as they reached the parking lot. Ethan checked his watch, then looked at Maya. Are you hungry? We could grab dinner. My treat. As a thank you for coming tonight. He said it casually, but Maya caught the hopeful note in his voice. She should say no. Should go home and put some distance between herself and the situation that was getting more complicated by the minute. Ice cream sounds great, she heard herself say. They ended up at Sophie's favorite place, a diner that had been around forever, with cracked vinyl booths and a menu the size of a newspaper. Sophie ordered chocolate chip pancakes for dinner because, as she informed them seriously, when you win a ribbon at an art show, you can have breakfast for dinner. You got a ribbon? Maya asked. Sophie nodded proudly and pulled a red participation ribbon from her pocket. Everyone gets one, but mine is for being in the show, which is still important. It's very important, Ethan agreed. They squeezed into a booth. Sophie insisted on sitting next to Maya, which meant Maya and Ethan were across from each other. Under the fluorescent lights, Maya could see the tiredness around Ethan's eyes, the slight stubble on his jaw that suggested he'd been too busy to shave that morning. But he was smiling. Really smiling as he watched Sophie add more syrup to her already drowning pancakes. Not too much, Soph, he said, but he didn't stop her. Maya ordered a burger. Ethan got coffee and pie, which Sophie found hilarious. That's not dinner. Daddy, I had a late lunch, he said, which was probably a lie based on how quickly he ate the pie. They talked about everything and nothing. Sophie's upcoming field trip to the zoo, a new project Ethan was working on at his firm. Maya's designs for a local coffee shop that had finally agreed to look at her portfolio. It felt natural, easy, like they'd done this 100 times before. At one point, Sophie excused herself to go look at the old jukebox in the corner, and Maya and Ethan were left alone. Thank you for coming tonight, he said. It meant a lot to her. To both of us. I wanted to be there. I know, but still. He wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. I think this is the happiest I've seen her since before her mom died. She's still sad sometimes, we both are, but there's this lightness now. And I think a lot of that is because of you. Maya didn't know what to say. The weight of his gratitude mixed with something else. Something that hummed in the air between them. She painted you as part of our family, Ethan said quietly. And everyone at that art show assumed you were. My girlfriend, Sophie's stepmom, whatever. And the weird thing is, it didn't feel wrong. It felt... He trailed off, not finishing the thought. Ethan, I know this is complicated. You're Sophie's babysitter and I'm your employer. And there are about 100 reasons this is inappropriate for me to even say out loud. He looked at her directly, his eyes intense. But I think you feel it too. This thing between us. Maya's mouth went dry. I don't think we should... I'm not asking you for anything, he said quickly. I just needed to say it. To acknowledge that it's real, whatever this is. Sophie came bounding back before Maya could respond, chattering about how the jukebox had songs from when dinosaurs were alive, which made Ethan laugh and the moment pass. But on the drive home, Ethan insisted on dropping her off since it was late. Maya couldn't stop thinking about his words. About the way everyone had assumed they were together. About how right it had felt to stand there in that gym, looking at Sophie's painting of the three of them as a family, Ethan walked her to her building's entrance, Sophie half asleep on his shoulder. Same time Tuesday? He asked. Maya knew she should say no. Should tell him she needed to step back, create some boundaries, protect herself and Sophie from whatever this was becoming. But looking at them, this tired, trying his best father and his sweet, resilient daughter, she couldn't do it. Same time, she agreed. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya tried to create distance without actually leaving. She showed up exactly on time instead of a few minutes early. She left as soon as Ethan got home instead of staying to chat. She kept their text messages strictly professional. But Sophie noticed. Are you mad at me? Sophie asked one Tuesday evening while they were coloring. What? No, of course not. Why would you think that? You've been quiet, and you left really fast last time, and you didn't bring any new art supplies. Sophie kept her eyes on her coloring, pressing the crayon down hard. If I did something wrong, you can tell me. Maya's heart cracked. Sophie, honey, you didn't do anything wrong. I promise. Then why are you being different? Because I'm scared. Because I'm falling for your father and I don't know what to do about it. Because this was supposed to be simple and now it's anything but. I'm just tired from work, Maya said instead. I'm sorry if it seems like I'm being weird. Sophie looked up at her with those two knowing eyes. You can tell me stuff, you know. I'm a good secret keeper. I know you are. Is it about my daddy? Maya froze. Why would it be about your daddy? Because you both get weird around each other now. Like you want to talk, but you don't know what to say. My friend Hannah's parents did that before they got divorced. Sophie said it matter-of-factly, then returned to her coloring. But you and Daddy aren't married, so I don't know why you're being weird. Out of the mouths of children. Maya didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That evening, when Ethan got home, Sophie was already in bed. Maya gathered her things quickly, but he stopped her at the door. Did I mess everything up? He asked without preamble. At the diner when I said all that stuff. You've been different since then. I haven't been different. Maya. Sophie thinks you're mad at her because you're being so distant. And I know that's my fault. It's not your fault. It's just, Maya struggled for words. This is complicated, Ethan. I'm your employee. Sophie's babysitter. That's supposed to be all this is, but it's not. No, Maya admitted quietly. It's not. They stood there in his doorway, the hallway behind Maya quiet, the apartment behind Ethan warm with soft light. Everything in her wanted to step closer. Everything in her knew she shouldn't. I don't know what to do here, Ethan said. I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sophie's mom. And the guilt of that alone is enough to keep me up at night. But then I think about how happy Sophie is now. How you've brought this light into our lives and I can't... He stopped, his jaw working. I can't pretend I don't feel something. What are you asking me? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe just to stop pretending we're both not thinking about this all the time. Maya closed her eyes. This was the moment. She could walk away right now. Keep this professional, save all three of them from potential heartbreak down the line. It was the smart choice. The safe choice. I can't stop thinking about you, she whispered. Both of you. And it scares me. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was looking at her like she'd just said something devastating and wonderful all at once. Me too, he said. Every day, neither of them moved. Neither of them closed the distance. But something shifted in that moment, some acknowledgement that they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. I should go, Maya said. Okay, but she didn't move. And neither did he, and the air between them felt electric with everything they weren't saying. Finally, Maya forced herself to step back. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Maya. She made it to the elevator before the tears started. Not sad tears exactly, just overwhelmed ones, because Jessica had been right to warn her. She'd let herself become part of something that wasn't really hers, and now she didn't know how to protect her heart from the inevitable hurt. But as the elevator descended, she thought about Sophie's painting. 3 figures holding hands, a family, and she wondered if maybe, just maybe, some things were worth the risk. Maya was halfway through helping a customer pick out candles when her phone rang. She normally wouldn't answer during work, but Ethan's name flashing on the screen made her stomach drop. He never called during the day. I'm so sorry to bother you at work, he said the moment she answered, his voice tight with stress. But the school just called. Sophie's sick. They can't reach me because I'm in the middle of a pitch meeting. I mean, I stepped out, but I can't leave. I'm the lead on this, and there are 8 people from the client here, and I'll go get her, Maya interrupted. Which school? She could hear the relief in his exhale. Madison Elementary on 5th, thank you. God, thank you. I'll get there as soon as I can, I promise. Maybe an hour, maybe 2. Ethan, it's fine. I'll take care of her. Her manager wasn't thrilled about her leaving early, but when Maya explained it was a family emergency, she let her go. Maya didn't correct the family part. It was easier that way. The school secretary looked at her with surprise when she arrived. You're here for Sophie Carter? Yes, her dad couldn't leave work. The secretary checked her computer. I don't see your name on the approved pickup list. Maya's heart sank. Of course she wasn't on the list. Why would she be? She was just the babysitter. Can you call Ethan? He'll approve it. It took 15 minutes of phone calls and verification, but finally they led her back to the nurse's office. Sophie was lying on a cot, looking small and miserable. Her face was flushed, and she had that glassy-eyed look kids get when they're running a fever. Maya? Sophie's voice was hoarse. Where's Daddy? He's at work, but he's coming as soon as he can. I'm going to take you home, okay? Sophie nodded weakly, then immediately groaned. My stomach hurts. I know, sweetie. Let's get you home. Getting Sophie to the apartment was an adventure. She fell asleep in the car, woke up feeling nauseous, and Maya had to pull over twice just in case. By the time they made it upstairs, Sophie was crying quietly. That exhausted, sick crying that breaks your heart. Maya got her into pajamas, gave her water and children's medicine, and settled her on the couch with a blanket and her stuffed rabbit. Then she called the pediatrician's office, explaining Sophie's symptoms. The nurse said it sounded like a stomach bug and to keep her hydrated, but if she got worse, to bring her in. For the next 2 hours, Maya stayed on the couch with Sophie, who alternated between fitful sleep and waking up feeling terrible. Maya kept a cool washcloth on her forehead, held her when she cried, and reassured her that she'd feel better soon, even though she felt completely out of her depth. This wasn't babysitting. This was real parenting stuff, the scary, helpless feeling of trying to make a sick kid comfortable when you didn't really know what you were doing. When Ethan finally burst through the door at 4:30, he looked frantic. His tie was gone, his hair was a mess, and he was breathing hard like he'd run from the elevator. How is she? Is she okay? Did you call the doctor? The questions tumbled out as he dropped to his knees beside the couch, pressing his hand to Sophie's forehead. The nurse said it's probably just a bug, Maya said quietly. Sophie had finally fallen into a deeper sleep about 20 minutes ago. I gave her medicine. She's been keeping water down for the last hour. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, his hand still on his daughter's head. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't. His voice cracked. It's okay. I was happy to help. He looked up at her then, and something in his expression made Maya's breath catch. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, more raw. I was in the middle of the most important pitch of my career, he said quietly, standing in front of potential investors who could make or break my partnership. And all I could think about was getting to Sophie. About how I wasn't there when she needed me. About how I'm always not there. He swallowed hard. And then you were there. You just showed up and took care of her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan, no, let me finish. He stood up slowly, careful not to disturb Sophie. Come here for a second. Maya followed him to the kitchen, far enough that they wouldn't wake Sophie, but close enough to hear if she called out. Ethan leaned against the counter, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw him completely fall apart. I can't do this anymore, he said, his voice breaking. I can't keep pretending I'm holding it together. I'm terrified every single day that I'm failing her, that I'm working too much, that I'm not present enough, that she's going to grow up and realize her dad was never really there. The words came faster now, like a dam breaking, and I feel so guilty. About her mom, about the fact that we fought that night before the accident. She wanted me to stay home from a work trip, and I said no, and we argued. And she was upset when she got in that car. I can't stop thinking that if I just stayed home, she'd still be alive. Maya's heart broke for him. Ethan, you can't blame yourself, but I do. Every single day. And then you came into our lives, and for the first time in 2 years, Sophie seemed happy again. Really happy. And I look at you with her. How patient you are, how creative, how you just know what she needs before she asks. And I think about how you were the one who got called today. Not me. How you dropped everything without hesitation. He looked at her with eyes that were too bright. And I realize I'm falling for you, Maya. That I've been falling for you since that first night when you painted with her. And I don't know what to do about it because I'm your boss and you're young and this is completely inappropriate, and I'm probably about to lose the best thing that's happened to us in 2 years. Maya stood there stunned. She'd known there was something between them. But hearing him say it out loud, hearing the desperation and hope and fear in his voice made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "You're not going to lose me," she said quietly. "But this is crazy. I'm 34 with a kid. You're 24, just starting your career. You should be dating people your own age, going out, having fun, not playing parent to someone else's child. Stop," Maya said firmly. "Stop telling me what I should want." He looked at her, surprise cutting through the anguish. "I'm not some kid who doesn't know her own mind," Maya continued. "I know this is complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this doesn't make sense. But I also know that when I'm with you and Sophie, I feel more at home than I've felt anywhere since I moved to this city. I know that I think about you both constantly, that I look forward to Tuesday and Thursday nights more than anything else in my week. That when Sophie got sick today, my first thought wasn't, this is above my pay grade. It was, I need to take care of her. Maya, I'm scared too," she admitted. "I'm scared that I'm not ready for this, that I'll let Sophie down, or that you'll realize I'm just a temporary thing and this will all fall apart. But I'm also tired of pretending that what I feel isn't real." They stared at each other across the kitchen. Outside, the city hummed with its usual evening sounds. In the living room, Sophie stirred slightly but didn't wake. And in the space between them, everything hung in the balance. "I can't offer you easy," Ethan said finally. "I come with a lot of baggage. A kid who's still grieving. A demanding job. Guilt that might never completely go away. In-laws who might not accept someone new. A life that's already half-built and complicated." "I don't need easy," Maya said. "I need real." Something in his expression shifted. "This could mess everything up. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But what if it does?" He took a step toward her. Then another. "What if I'm using you as a replacement? What if you're just filling a hole in our lives and that's not fair to you? Do you think that's what this is?" "No," the answer came without hesitation. "You're not a replacement for anything. You're something completely new. Something I didn't know I could have." They were close now. Close enough that Maya could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. The exhaustion lines around them, the hope and fear warring on his face. "So what do we do?" she whispered. "I don't know. I've never done this before. The dating while being a single parent thing. And especially not with someone who's already part of Sophie's life." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I know I don't want to keep pretending that my heart doesn't race every time you walk through that door." "Mine too," Maya admitted. "I need to do this right," Ethan said. "For Sophie's sake, if nothing else. We can't just jump into something and hope it works out. She's already been through too much loss." "I agree. So we take it slow. We figure out what this is before we tell Sophie anything. And if at any point you want out, you can walk away. No hard feelings, no guilt." "That's not how feelings work," Maya said softly. "There would be guilt and hurt. For all of us." "I know." He looked at her with such tenderness that her chest ached. "But you deserve the option to leave if this gets too heavy." "What about you? Do you get the option,